There's a quote from Red Dead Redemption 2 that I find myself contemplating often. Near the end of the game, Chief Rainsfall says to your character that you can't change a person. They just become more of who they really are. Top 10 pick is one of the most prestigious badges that an NBA player can wear, but that blessing can easily become a curse. Even if they fail due to circumstances beyond their control, they might still be branded unfairly with one of the most undesirable four-letter words in all of sports: bust. I think it's important to acknowledge just how cruel this entire process can be. Player evaluation is absolutely riddled with human error. It's horrifying to hear stories of Michael Jordan forcing Kwame Brown and Tyson Chandler to play one-on-one for the top spot in the draft, or Kiki Vandeweghe admitting that he hadn't even seen Nikoloz Skidishvili play before taking him at number 5 in 2002, or, again, pretty much anything Michael Jordan has done. When we look back to assess a player's career, we have to ask ourselves, did this player fail to become what they should have, or did we fail to identify them for what they truly are? And if a player has failed to be excellent right away, is there any chance that they can change teams and climb back to glorious heights? Before we slap the suck sticker on somebody's bumper, I think we should all take a moment to agree on what expectations are reasonable for a top 10 pick. First, we'll need a simple way to measure player performance. It's not the best at measuring defensive impact, but to get a ballpark idea, Basketball Reference's box plus minus should do the trick for this exercise. Purely going by box plus minus, we can get a rough idea of what the average production should be for a starter or rotation level player in the league. These marks have shifted over time for different reasons, but on average in the last 20 years, a rotation player in the NBA sits at about -2 and a starter hovers at about -0.3. It's important to keep in mind that rotation here just means that you were in the top 240 players in the NBA. 30 teams, varying from stellar to terrible, fielding rotations of around 8 guys. We'll use this to frame some of what we're going to talk about going forward. Since 1999, in 20 NBA drafts, we've had 200 players get selected in the top 10. 52 of those players would hit the All-Star mark at least once. Whittle that down to 29 when you're talking about players who made first or second team All-NBA. And when we're talking about the best of the best, the MVPs, we're down to 6 players. Greatness is a train that leaves the station quickly, so you'd better have your ticket ready, because by year 2, we very often have a good idea if you're going to be a top-level NBA player or not. Using box plus minus, we can see that it's normal, even for historically great players, to have a bumpy year 1. The defensive vernacular, the physicality, the grind of the schedule, even for the truly elite, it can take some getting used to. But among MVP winners since 2000, each and every player was above 0 by year 2. The MVP development track is rigorous, and these types of guys are so rare that if you have the chance to draft one, you should take them. That year 2 bar is typically true for all NBA caliber players too. Of those 29 players that were taken in the top 10 since 1999 that have made first or second team All-NBA, only 5 of those players had a BPM score lower than 0 in their second year. Those players, Carmelo, Boogie, Amare, Andrew Bynum, and DeMar DeRozan, were hovering near rotation level production at the time. How you start really matters for the trajectory of your career, and it's incredibly important to adapt fast. Past that, the slope gets slippery. Lots of things can and do go wrong during the first contract stint for an NBA player.
The pressures put so much emotional stress on you that if you don't have the systems in place that you had in the past to be successful, you got to find new ones. And if you don't have awareness that you're off kilter in that regard, you won't find new ones. I didn't do any of that, and it really hurt me.
Sometimes injuries can play a part. People forget, but in 2009, Greg Oden was actually on track to becoming a good NBA player. After missing year 1 and playing 1 1/4 seasons for a pretty good Blazers team, he was just never the same player again. Jonathan Bender was a freakish 7-foot gazelle that could run and space the floor before his knees absolutely betrayed him. Marcus Fizer suffered knee injuries too, and before that, he admits that he was not particularly open to advice as a young player.
You know, Charles Oakley and Scottie Pippen and Antonio Davis and those guys like that was trying to teach me I wasn't trying to listen to them at that age. I was so athletic, I was so big, and I was so strong, and I thought my talent would take me so much further than anything else.
When the Bulls took Eddie Curry with the 4th pick in 2001, they likely thought that he and Tyson Chandler would be a 7-foot offensive-defensive hoops yin-yang that could battle Shaq and finally usher in the first positive chapter of the post-MJ era. It's a sad story, but Curry's young body was already on the verge of totally breaking down, and after a dispute about a DNA test for a heart defect, Curry was shipped to New York, and by year 9 of his career, he was out of the league. Derek Williams seemed like a no-brainer in the months leading up to the 2011 NBA draft, and it springboarded him into being picked number 2 overall, the highest pick in Timberwolves history to that point. 2 years later, he was being shipped to Sacramento for Luc Richard and Mbah a Moute. By 2015, he was openly and willingly talking about being a second-unit guy on a terrible Knicks team.
I think anybody who gets drafted pretty high, I think feels a sense of pressure, or they're expected, to average 30 points when they come out, but some people learn slower.
The plunge from "I could be a star" to "holy shit, I might not even be a role player" is a shocking one. For some, that is just too much to deal with, and they never recover. For others, it just becomes about shifting their mindset and accepting the reality that they're going to have to simply do what they can to hang around.
Well, all the time you spend trying to get back what's been took from you, more is going out the door.
27% of the top 10 picks since 1999 have registered a BPM below what we have established as rotation level in their second season. And half of those players switched teams by year 3. Of that half, 27 players in total, only 8 of them, guys like Sagana Diop, Channing Frye, Bismack Biyombo, went on to string together at least 2 consecutive seasons of starter-level production in the NBA. There are a number of reclamation projects happening in the NBA at this very moment. So what does the past tell us about their chances to turn things around? As we know, Markelle Fultz's issues are incredibly unique. In the years since he went number 1 to Philadelphia, he has played a whopping 34 games. And the more novel his routine positives became, the more the fan support started to seem like parents cheering when baby chose to eat their vegetables. Fultz needs normalcy, and the fact that he looks comfortable operating with a live dribble and stilted off the ball is a reflection of that. He has so far to go, and it saddens me to say that the ceiling has come down significantly. We really should make sure that teams get their share of the blame. Bad development environments can certainly make things worse, and unfortunately those are often the teams picking high in the draft. For the trio of players drafted by Ryan McDonough in 2016 and 2017, we're approaching make or break time. I think it's safe to say at this point that Josh Jackson did not make the leap. Jackson was taken number 4 in 2017, and this season, he's starting the year on the Grizzlies' G League team. Dragan Bender has looked sharp from 3 in the preseason, but he's barely seen the floor during the early days of his tenure with the Bucks. Marquise Chris is showing flickers of promise under the tutelage of Draymond, who seems to think that the culture of Phoenix might have played a role. Emmanuel Mudiay, Stanley Johnson, and Ben McLemore are also in better positions than where they started, but all are faced with limited expectations, and there's very little reason to think that they've changed. Jahlil Okafor, the guy who was once considered to be the obvious shoe-in top pick over possible future MVP Karl Towns, looked like he was trending positive last season after battling injuries and an NBA that's rendered players of his type more or less obsolete. He has improved, but his heels are still over the edge. Frank Ntilikina has his supporters, and of course, your boy Kevin O'Connor is one of them.
I get it. Frank Ntilikina can't shoot, he can't dribble, he can't score, but we knew he would suck on offense when he was drafted, and he just turned 21 years old, and he's already a high-level defensive player, which gives him a foundation for potential success as his ball handling and spot-up shooting improves over time, just like it has already. Is it slow? Yes. Will he be a star? Probably not, but he can be a high-impact player at some point in his career.
So, should you expect a former top 10 pick that stumbled out of the gate to course correct towards a meaningful career? I don't want to paint a bleak picture here, but based on what we know, probably not. In the same way that a player is, to quote Jalen Rose, open for a reason, if you can scoop up a recent top 10 pick, they're available for a reason. NBA teams seem smarter than ever, and the public discourse about prospective NBA players is more constructive and thorough than it's ever been. It's possible that these things could play a part in avoiding total disaster when a team drafts a young player. We can only hope. I think the Chief Rain's fall, all those years ago in that fictional depiction of the American West, was more right than he'll ever know. These players tell us who they are. We just have to do everything we can to see it early. Let me know if you agree.